All right, today we are jumping headfirst into a theory about UFOs that is, well, it's out there. It's going to make you question everything you think you know, not just about alien spaceships, but about life itself. The source for all this, it's a pretty controversial book from 1975 called The Cosmic Pulse of Life. And trust me, this thing throws the whole aliens from other planets idea right out the window. So, here's the core idea, the big question the book throws at us. What if those things we see in the sky, what if they aren't spaceships at all? What if they're actually alive, living, breathing creatures? Okay, so to wrap our heads around this, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll talk about this new kind of UFO. Then we'll get into what the book calls the 6 basic truths. After that, we'll meet these living critters in the sky. Then we'll talk about the Etherians. And finally, we'll look at the, let's call it unconventional science behind all of this. So, first things first, this book just completely tosses the classic nuts and bolts idea of UFOs. You know, the idea of physical ships coming from other solar systems. The author says, nope, that's not it. You're completely missing the point if you think that way. Apparently, that communication laid out what he calls the 6 basic truths. These are supposed to be the fundamental rules of a hidden reality, completely flipping the script on the whole UFO mystery. All right, let's unpack these. Point 1. UFOs are spaceships, but their matter isn't fixed. They're mutants. 2. They're normally invisible to us. 3. The beings behind them are etheric and can just appear. 4. There's a war going on for control of the human mind. Whoa. 5. You've got negative forces from beneath and positive forces from above fighting it out. And then, number 6. This is where it gets really weird. It says there are also invisible living things in space that are not spaceships. And that last point, that's our doorway into the concept of critters. The book basically says our atmosphere is packed with invisible biological life, like a whole ecosystem of animals flying around that we just can't see. Now, to back up this wild claim, the book digs up this really strange eyewitness account from all the way back in 1925. A guy named Mr. Woods saw something fall out of the sky in the Nevada desert, and he was adamant it was not a machine. He said it was like a giant clam, opening and closing. It was pulsating, like it was breathing, and it seemed hurt. He described this thing as being about 30 feet wide, all moist and glistening. And get this, there was a smaller one on the ground, and this bigger one seemed to land on top of it, almost like it was helping it. After a while, it just lifted off and went back into the sky. So the key takeaway here is he wasn't talking about a crashed ship. He was describing an animal. So taking accounts like that, the book starts to build a profile for these so-called critters. They're these massive amoeba-like creatures. They're discoidal, they pulsate, they even have their own light source. And they normally live invisibly in the atmosphere. But sometimes, maybe when they're hurt, they become visible. And that whole story about one helping another, that suggests they might even have some kind of social behavior. Okay, so we've got the biological critters. But then, totally separate from them, the book talks about another kind of being. These are the intelligent ones, the pilots of the more structured, ship-like UFOs. And here's the kicker. They're not aliens from some other planet. They're called Etherians. Etheria? What's that? Well, according to the book, it's a parallel realm. Not some far-off galaxy, but another dimension that coexists right here with ours. It's a reality made of a different kind of matter, all around us, but totally invisible. The book has a really cool way of explaining this. Imagine our reality is like a giant fishing net, but the holes, the meshes, are a mile wide. We live only on the thin little strands of the net. Etheria, on the other hand, is all the substance that fills those huge mile-wide spaces in between the strands. It's 1,000 times more substantial than our world, with totally different laws of physics. And that's how these UFOs can just appear and disappear. But here's the real mind-bender. According to the text, Etheria isn't some alien place. It's supposedly our original home. We are all Etherians by ancestry and descent. So we're the ones who are kind of out of place here in this dense world. Our true roots are in that invisible reality. Okay, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds completely impossible to prove, right? Well, that brings us to the final part of this puzzle, the science the author claims he uses to actually take pictures of these invisible things. The secret, according to the author, is something called Orgone energy. You can think of it as a universal life energy, or bioenergy. This is the stuff these creatures and ships are made of. It's what they run on. It's the ocean they swim in.
So the problem is obvious, isn't it? How do you photograph something that's totally invisible to the naked eye and to a normal camera?
Well, the author had a whole method. He said you have to use special film, especially infrared. He'd go out and shoot at specific times, like dawn and dusk, when all this energy is supposedly in flux. And this is a big one. He believed that the photographer, the observer, is part of the process, that your own energy field can actually affect what shows up on the film. And this is his whole justification for why his approach is so unconventional. He basically says official scientists are getting nowhere because they're stuck. They're looking for nuts and bolts, so they're completely missing this living biological reality. They are, as the quote says, looking in all the wrong places for their answers. So when you put it all together, what do you get? You get a picture of the cosmos that isn't just cold, empty space with a few planets here and there. No, it's a living, breathing thing. A universe that's layered with different realities we can't normally see, all pulsing with this life energy. And really, that's the thought I want to leave you with. Whether you think this is total pseudoscience or a mind-blowing insight, it pushes us to ask a pretty wild question. Is our reality way more crowded than we think? Is the very air around us teeming with life that we just can't see?